So good evening, everyone. Oh, welcome, everyone. And again, good evening. Thank you for joining today. Um, I would like to start with a general and good intention motivations for being here. And before that, maybe short mindful breathing exercise to quiet our mind, to bring our mind in moment present. So just make yourself relax, comfortable. And I feel the weight of your body on cushion chair. And bring your attention to the breath as you inhale and exhale. Watching and observing it mindfully and being aware. And then we can, once your mind is settled down, we can try to generate good intention, motivation for being here. And we can think and contemplate if we really check our life and our experiences deeply and profoundly, the reason why we're unhappy, dissatisfied, agitated, and disturbed, the reason why we have problem is not just the external conditions. Mainly it is due to our own state of mind. As long as we have craving, anger, and so forth, even when external conditions are good, we will always find reason to be unhappy, disturbed, problem. And the reason why we continue to have such craving and anger is due to the ignorance of not seeing the Dharma, the dependent arising, due to the ignorance of that. Therefore, if we want to have more inner peace, satisfaction, joy, happiness, we should try to reduce those disturbing negative emotions instead of just trying to change the external condition, only that one. And in order to reduce those disturbing negative feelings, emotions, state of mind, one need to cultivate and fully develop, the wisdom relies on the dependent arising. True nature of all the phenomena. And to have correct, unmistaken understanding or realization of dependent arising, we need to meditate, contemplate, continue to practice. And for that, we need to be reminded of the practice. And that is why we have come here together to listen, to engage in discussions, reflection, contemplations. So hopefully we can be encouraged and inspired to contemplate, meditate, or to be reminded, or at least to have some imprint in our mind's mental stream. May I ask, coming here together to listen, to reflect, contemplate, may all of this become cause and conditions to obtain our highest potential, the fully awakened state. So we can fulfill the highest purpose of oneself and all sentient beings. Okay. We do the refuge and bodhicitta. Sangye chodan soge chonam la chanju patu dani kyapsu che dagi chinye gi be so namge dola penje sangye duba sho sangye chodan soge chonam la chanju patu dani kyapsu che dagi chinye gi be so nam Dola penje sangye duba shio. Sangye chedan sogi chonam la. Chanchu patu dane kyapsu che. Dagi chushe gibe sonam ge. Dola penje sangye duba shio. Kanje duje nyeso ne to tamje pangpe che. Tampe chune tunze pe kodam de la chap sa lo. So I have been asked, requested to talk on dependent arisings based on one particular verse. Um, where the Buddha says, all phenomena that originate from causes, the Tathagata has taught those causes. So, meaning, Tathagata, the Buddha, has explained all phenomena, everything's, all conditioned phenomena, all conditioned phenomena are being produced or arises due to the cause and conditions. So, not only he explained that, then he explained what are those cause and conditions, of all those conditioned phenomena. And then that also, and also that which puts a stop to those causes. This too has been taught by the great Chamana or Gejong Chembo. Mm. Buddha also taught, when you stop creating the cause and conditions, then one can stop the result of such cause and conditions. Basically, talking about all our experience in our samsaric life, all the suffering, all the problem, all the pain, do not arises from nowhere without any cause and conditions. Nor they are being produced by a permanent cause and conditions. Nor by they are being created by, some kind of powerful agent, but they are result of, specific cause and conditions. Every our suffering that we experience, they are result of very specific cause and conditions. We will talk, from Buddhist point of view, the actions of karma and the delusions. Which motivate us to create such actions. The negative karma and contaminated karma, is the cause condition that give or that produce such suffering state and the suffering. When and not only Buddha taught how those suffering comes, how the suffering arises, but also he is taught how to end those sufferings. In the suffering state, the state of suffering. And how we can end the suffering is by ending the cause and condition that produce the sufferings. So in the first two lines, if we try to, explained from the Four Noble Truths, it explained the first truth, two truth, the truth of suffering and truth of origin, And second two line explain the truth of cessation and the truth of the path that lead to the cessations. Also, um, if you try to look from 12 dependent arising or 12 dependent link, again, the reason that we suffer, if you go back, then it is due to, the ignorance. Due to the ignorance. That suffering arises, from the ignorance. And when ignorance is stopped or when ignorance is eliminated, then there's no more suffering. There's no more suffering. The suffering is ended. And then one achieves the cessations, the nirvana. That is also being taught by the Buddha. So, that is kind of just going the one verses, the fourth line, then maybe I might want to touch a little bit more on that. In the Mahana Sutra of rice seedling, Buddha talk about, we will cease dependent arising. That person sees the Dharma. Whoever sees the Dharma, the person sees the Buddha. Mm. And it is described in the sutras, Buddha explained that, and then Buddha was very silent, went into silent and deep meditations. He didn't explain directly much on that. And there was many audience, 1,250 monks, bhikshus, and other lay practitioners, Bodhisattva practitioners. And within the audience, there is Shariputra and Bodhisattva Maitreya. And Shariputra asked Maitreya, what does dependent arising means? What is the meaning of when you see the dependent arising? Someone, that person sees the Dharma. What is the meaning of awakening one? And how does you see the Dharma? How does you see the awakening? And then Maitreya kind of explained by the power of the Buddha, Just like in the Heart Sutra, the main conversation was between Shariputra and Avalokiteshvara. Bodhsattva Avalokiteshvara. And their conversation was again started by Buddha's blessings, by his power. It wasn't like conversation they started by themselves. Similarly here, mm, so in that sutra, what is the dependent arisings is, we can have understanding of dependent arising on many different levels. Okay. On a more gross level, how all conditioned phenomena arises by depending on cause that is already there. The cause is already there, and by depending on that cause, sudden result is being produced. Because something's already being produced or being born, by depending on that, sudden effect is being produced or born. Therefore, in the sutras, because this exists, therefore that exists. Because this is produced, therefore that is being produced. So due to certain cause and conditions, then certain result is being produced. Certain result come into existence, arises. So the all condition phenomena depend on such cause and conditions. So then when you talk about cause and conditions or dependent arising, then we can talk about, even in the Siddling Sutta, Buddha talk about outer dependent arising, internal dependent arisings. And the verse that I just read, that is from different sutras, is more describing about internal or inner dependent arisings. But in the Siddling Sutras, Buddha describe or talk about both. First, outer dependent arisings, and then inner dependent arisings. In terms of outer and inner dependent arisings, then as mentioned, is dependent on cause and conditions. So then there's a, explanation or descriptions of causal relationship and conditional relationship. If we take an example of a plant, okay, the causal relationship is due to the seed, then sprout is produced. And that having that seed producing the sprout, then that sprout produce the leaf. That leaf then produce or transform into a stem, and then then flowers, and from that flowers, then the fruit. If there is no seed, there is no sprout of that seed. If there is no sprout of that seed, there's no stems and of that. Without that stem, no branch, no leaves, and no flowers. Without that flower, there is no fruit from that flowers, from that tree. That is the cause of the relationship, how, the fruit comes through that tree or the flower, and that flowers arise is being produced through the other causes. And if you go back to the seed. And it is also explained, the seed do not think that I'm going to produce a sprout, nor the sprout think that I'm being produced by the seed. In the same way, the flower doesn't think I'm going to produce the fruit, nor the fruit thinks that I'm being produced by the flower. But when certain cause and condition comes, certain result is produced. It's about cause and condition. It's not about someone thinking, I need to produce it. I want to produce that. And I think that in that explanation, I think maybe Buddha is trying to clarify something, because in some of the school of thought, early school of thought, where there is a certain belief that, very powerful creator God have a thought of creating such and such. On the basis of that thought, then things are being created and come into existence. So I think with that explanation, I think Buddha is trying to make distinguishing. Here, Buddha says he doesn't believe in that. He doesn't believe that there need to be a thought of creating something, and then on the basis of that thought, preceding that thought, and then something being created. And giving that example, the seed does not have thought of producing sprout, but when certain cause and condition comes, sprout is being produced. The sprout doesn't think that I'm being produced by the seed, but when certain cause and condition is being produced. Same with the flower and the fruit. So it's more about creating the right cause and conditions. When you create the right cause and condition, when the right cause and condition come together, then certain results are being produced, whether you think you are going to produce or whether you don't think you are going to produce. Mm. Just like Shantideva explained, things doesn't just follow just by the wish. If everything follows just by the wish, nobody will suffer, experience suffering, because nobody wants sufferings. Nobody wishes sufferings. So it's not just wishing something to happen, not to happen. It's more about creating the cause and condition. It's more about bringing the cause and condition, creating the cause and condition together. So when certain cause and condition come together, then certain experience, certain result is being produced. So that is the relation with the cause. And then Buddha also talked about the relationship with the condition. So here he seems to kind of distinguish and differentiate cause and conditions. Sometimes the cause and condition could mean same thing, but in certain time is not the same. So in here, Buddha distinguish cause and conditions. The cause, we talk about the seed, and then the seed being the cause of the sprout, sprout being the seed of the stem, that being the cause of the tree and the plant, and that being cause of the flower, and that being cause of the fruit. So then in terms of the cause, and condition relationship, then Buddha explained about 6 conditions. And that we can think of kind of cooperative or supporting conditions for that tree to grow and that have the fruit. So those are like the conditions are the water element, the 6 elements, fire element, earth elements, the wind elements, the space elements, and in terms of outer dependent arising, then Buddha explained season elements. So not only you need the seed, the cause, but you also need all other supporting conditions. The earth element, the ground to which you grow the plant. The plant cannot grow in the space. Not only it need the earth, but it also need the water to moisture it. Without the water, it will not grow. Not only you need the water, it need the 5 elements, the heat. That is why when it's below many zeros, then a lot of plants die because there is not enough fire elements to keep it alive. The air, the wind elements, for that to grow and move, Then the space element, if there is no space, it will not be able to grow. And season elements, certain plants grow in certain seasons. It can only grow in certain seasons. So again, it's depending on what kind of plant grow in what. It depends on the season. So these are the other factors, conditional factor that support. So in relation to the both cause and conditions, then such plant or with the fruit is being produced. And also there also Buddha explained, similar like previous one, the earth element doesn't think that I'm going to produce that sprout, nor the each of those elements doesn't think that I'm going to produce the sprout. But when all these cause conditions come together, then such result is being produced. And I feel like it's important to distinguish this cause and condition just as Buddha distinguished here in that sutta. That with the example in the outer dependent arisings. just cause. The seed is not enough to produce. You need other supporting conditions. You know, the cause and then other supporting conditions. Together with the cause and such as the seed and other supporting conditions such as the sixth element, then it can produce such result. And that, if we understand that, then we can apply also to the internal world, then I think we can have better understanding of karma and the functioning of karma, because sometimes that can be kind of misunderstood or misinterpreted. Which maybe I might come when we talk about inner dependent arisings later. But just to kind of touch on, due to misunderstanding of karma, I feel like, sometimes everything that happened, we just say, it's karma, and not taking responsibility in a way for your present actions. And not trying to change the situation by changing the present actions. In that way, the karma acts like that seed, but the conditional factors are our present actions, our present state of mind, our present attitude, our present interpretations, our present actions. Karmic seed, with the together our present actions, then it produces certain specific experience or result. So you cannot ignore. Sometimes we ignore the present conditions by saying everything's karma and karma. Almost like the karma has already been, through our karma, everything's been fixed. There's nothing we can do it. Just kind of flow it, move with the flow. Sometimes there is misunderstanding on that. In some cases, sometimes there is that. Sometimes I feel, when people talk, sometimes they talk in such a way as though that you cannot change your karma. How can we change it? By changing the immediate conditions. That is why we need to differentiate these two things. To experience any experience, pleasant or unpleasant experiences, we need a karmic potential, karmic seed, as well as immediate conditions that we create now in present with our actions, with our attitude, mind, and so forth. So that I feel that is one extreme, Then the other extreme is kind of materialism, where we think, everything is immediate cause and condition, nothing to do with the past karmic seed. Everything's about what we do now. And there is nothing that influence from the past, such as karmic seeds, karmic potentials. Here, the Buddha explained, the way it explained is, I call is a middle way, free from those both extremes. So anyway, so I think I wanted to apply in that sutta, Buddha explained with the outer dependent arising. And if we apply that to inner dependent arising in relation to the karma, then I think that is how we should try to understand the cause and conditions. So through that understanding, what we understand is, also what we understand from here is any particular result, any particular result does not comes or is produced by one single cause and condition. It depends on multiple cause and conditions. Just as here, giving some examples, 6 elements, seed, more than one cause condition, many cause conditions, multiple cause and conditions. Shandeva also explained same thing, how our experiences, are being produced by not just one cause condition, but multiple cause and conditions. And again, is a important point. Not only it depends on cause condition, but multiple cause and conditions. One of the problem with us is a lot of time we try to identify only one cause. If something goes wrong, we identify one cause and we blame everything that for one cause. When it is not just one cause, there are multiple cause and conditions. Certain cause condition might play bigger role than others, leading to that, event, situation, circumstances, experiences. But it is not just one cause condition. There are multiple cause and conditions. So when we understand that, you don't just blame one. That is what we tend to do. And when we blame someone, for example, for all our problems, for all our sufferings, then your anger is much more stronger. All the energy is directed towards one object. It's much more intense, strong. But when you realize, that is only maybe one cause and conditions. There are many other cause and condition factors that lead to that particular event, situations, experiences. Then, there are so many cause conditions and your energies you don't focus on one particular objects. And so therefore it's less intense. It's less intense. To whom you blame, there's no, and since our energies, mental energies, the negative not directed to one particular object, is much more lighter, is much more, less intense, less strong. Also, in terms of trying to find the solutions to that problems or the suffering situation, event. Also, when you try to deal with that, then we try to also deal in much more broader way. Not just trying to fix one thing, but trying to understand all different factors that made that situations. So not only trying to solve one place, but all others. And then when you are able to do that, you will find you will be able to fix the problem for better. Otherwise, it's like, your car has many problems and it's breaking from many areas. And then you see one, oh, this one, and you fix it. And you might drive, and the next day something wrong because you haven't fixed the other problem. You fix that, and maybe after 1 week, again, it break down because, so many factors, cause and condition were there that lead to that breakdown. And even though there are so many factors, we only identify one and we couldn't identify all. And so therefore, to solve that problem, we only fix one. We didn't fix everything. So the problem doesn't go away. Even goes away is only temporary, only for a day, only for a week, only for a month before again it comes. Because we haven't identified all different cause, condition, factors that was involved. So again, having this understanding of dependent arisings, that how everything's depend on so many cause and conditions, not just one, but multiple cause and conditions. And having that understanding, that awareness will help us to see things more broader way and trying to solve in a more broader way. And that has better result in long term. Yeah. And same thing, if we think of our pain, sufferings, painful experiences, difficult and painful situations, circumstances, when something that happens, a lot of time we tend to blame one cause for that. But again, our own karma is involved. Even though that particular person, even though that particular elements, situation might have played some role or little role, but that is not all the reasons. There's karmic seed involved, karmic potential involved. What state of our mind we were in that moment also involved. How we interpret the situations can make difference. What kind of attitude we have towards that also affect, So there are multiple cause and conditions. But a lot of time we forget that, or we are not aware of that. And we immediately kind of point to one cause and blame everything for that. Mm. Yeah, so we're talking about that. I was talking about the multiple cause and condition, the difference between cause and conditions in these cases, and not only cause and condition, how it depends on multiple cause and conditions that apply for both outer dependent arisings, all the outer condition phenomena, as well as all the internal dependent arising, internal conditive, conditional phenomena. It apply all of them. as some teachers explain, when we understand that dependent arisings, when you see the table, you see the whole world in table. Instead of seeing one kind of isolated, independent table, but you see this table is connected, interrelated or connected with the whole world in a way. When you see the table, you are able to see the carpenter who put this together. You are able to see, all the different tools that it need to be fixed. You see all the different people who made those different tools. You are able to see the tree that is being used. When you see the tree, you are able to see the earth from where the tree grows. You are able to see the rain. You are able to see the light, the heat, the space, all of that. And you are able to see, wherever the seed come from, whether it's someone planted or whether it's dropped by a bird or someone, or it is a blew away the seed by the wind, wherever. And so when you look, then you are able to see the whole world here, to be able to see it. When you are able to see it, when you see one object, the whole world in that, you will be much more appreciative and grateful for that. When you don't see that, when we see something as very kind of, independent, kind of by itself, isolated, and then it's much more harder to appreciate. It's much more harder to feel grateful. Because you see how much effort, how much cause and conditions have been put there to create that, to make that. One of the example, if you recognize, let's say someone, a friends, family members, who is trying to cook for you, preparing for days, you know, running the whole days for many days, cooking. And then maybe the food might not come out so great, exactly the way you might like it. But if you have seen all the effort that has been put there, even it is not to your liking exactly in some taste, flavor, whatever that is, but you will appreciate because you see how much effort that is being put there. If you don't see that effort, probably you might complain more. Do you get it? How, if you haven't seen the effort, how much effort that is in food, based on something maybe you didn't like the right flavor, right taste, little bit too much salt, little bit too less, too much cooked, less cooked, whatever, all instead of appreciating and grateful for someone to, make a meals and offer you, you might feel, you know, unappreciative, ungrateful, and complaining. That make your mind disturbed, unhappy. Not only you are unhappy and disturbed, with your that kind of attitude and complain, it make other persons also unhappy, feel like their effort was not worthwhile. On the other hand, when someone see all the effort being put there, instead of complaining, you feel very appreciative, grateful. He or she has put so much effort. Even it's not perfect, but you see that and you are very grateful and appreciative. And when you're grateful and appreciative, it gives you joy and happiness, peace in the mind. And also with your appreciation and expressing that gratefulness, it also makes the other person happy too. And that is similar when we see, in everything, whether it's the cup, whether it's the table, whether it's the iPad, whether it's the clock, whether it's the hall, the chair, table, everything we use, if we see how much cause and conditions is needed to create that, And if we think of a tree, hundred, some of them, hundreds and thousands of years it takes to grow. And during that time, how much water it needs, the rain, water, whatever. So when we see all of that, all of that, we will be more appreciative and we will not just throw things so easily, We will not throw so easily. We'll try to use it as much as it functions. Because so much cause and conditions, energies, resource is needed to create one new one. Which affect, again, the environment, which affects the world we live in. We complain a lot about that. But then we contribute towards that a lot too. Just an example, when I could use this rope for 10 years easily but then if I just throw after 1 year, 2 years, because it's old, then again, I need to buy a new one. That means, more energy, more resource. That means my contributions toward the destructions of the environment and so forth. So just giving a very small example like that. And so when you see, that interconnectedness, interdependence, so many multiple causes and conditions that need to come together, that need to gather together to produce one particular objects, one particular things, when we really have that deep understanding, profound understanding, not just intellectual. We have this intellectual understanding now, and then when we are home, then we are back to our normal. Because our understanding is just here, just on intellectual, just like in a in the computer, just information there. But if we have deep, profound understanding on spiritual level, experiential level, from the going from, intellectual understanding to experiential understanding, then we will feel very differently in interacting with all the different objects, different phenomena, different objects. And that understanding, that dependent arising can give that kind of experiential dependent arising can give us a deep meaning and profound meaning and experience, and the way we relate and interact with any objects, you know, with much more of gratitude, appreciations, you know, preciousness, regarding as more preciousness, and so forth. If we understand that kind of dependent arising on outer external objects, outer dependent arising, then when we apply to internal world, internal dependent arising, internal objects, then we can, because the external dependent arising is something that we can see, more easy to see with our perceptions. The internal dependent arising is sometimes we cannot see with our sense perceptions. Sometimes we have to see with our mental perception, mental consciousness. And sometimes, that requires some kind of inference, reasoning, logics, because it's not a direct precept like we can see with our sense perceptions. But with something with you experience, you observe with the external world, and then we can say if that is how the external worlds work, that is the same how the internal world will work as well. Then you can apply that, Just like if you understand, of any things in certain places, then you can apply that same understanding in other places, similar things that in other places. You don't have to do the same experiment in every places, that same experiment. Once you have done that, then even in other places, it is similar, same. And so that is, again, that is why I think the Buddha explained about the outer dependent arising before he talked about the inner dependent arisings. Because it's much more easy for us to see and perceive the outer dependent arising more easily. And it is, that kind of dependent arisings. Buddha spoke more than 2,500 years ago, and it is something modern science are only talking about in recent times, how everything is dependent arisings. Even the language, dependent arisings. you know. In that we can see more and more office, especially in the outer dependent arising with the better technologies. And that, that now we see how in everything, you know, depend on so many cause and conditions. It's not kind of isolated, separate object or phenomena to phenomena, but how they are interconnected, how they are interrelated, you know, and how one affect the others, and so forth. In terms of economy, in terms of climate, in terms of politics, in terms of people's behavior, attitude, how the society, or culture of society, how certain society culture, you know, effect and vice versa, you know, um, yeah, sometimes it's interesting. I don't have the answer, but like definitely there is something, like now with the modern technology, we have better understanding, but in some area, you know, um, of that truth, of that fact of dependent arisings. Um, but it's interesting when you different part of the continent, 1,000 years ago or many thousand years ago, when they didn't know each other, they don't travel with each other. But how there are so many same similarity they do. I always wonder how that happens. You know, uh, even with like lot of the even the architectures in the Native Americans so similar to Tibet. Even the beams like this kind of design exactly same. The design of the not the beam, the pillars in the monastery like that design, and that is their design for long. Is not something that, and there's so many other things like that. You find all over the world. Um, but again, I think there's other way of dependent arising, how there's interconnected, how related some in some way. Maybe we haven't figured out exactly, but um, so that is a little bit for today. Yeah, a little bit on external or outer dependent arisings. Um, and then, yeah, we'll discuss a little bit more on that dependent arising in terms of inner dependent arising when it comes to sentient beings and sentient being experience, not just the outer world, the external world, but also when it comes to sentient beings and their experience, how they are um, also dependent arising, and then yeah, understanding on more deeper level. Um, why we experience pain and suffering, how, why, and how that pain, suffering can be stopped um, by recognizing and identify the real cause and conditions, and then how we can stop the cause and conditions, and by stopping the cause and condition, how we can stop the result, the painful result of such cause and conditions, and through dependent arisings. Okay. So I will open a few minutes for any questions, any comments, questions anyone has. Yes, please. Yeah, all phenomena dependent arising, all phenomena, the nature of all phenomena dependent arising, external, internal, not only our thoughts, everything's, our negative thoughts are dependent arising, our wisdom, positive thoughts are dependent arising. The sentient beings who have all that thought is dependent arising. Everything that we experience. Yeah, yes, yes. Being here is a dependent arising. Everything that we use around us is dependent arising. Everything there is, all phenomena dependent arisings. Yes, yes. Yes, that awareness, and that awareness help us to deal and interact differently with the objects than the way we interact and deal at the moment. Yes, please, Dennis. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it depends. Certain conditions is backing up is the best. Certain situation, maybe we need to kind of get involved and to make things clear and so that it doesn't happen again. So again, it depends. Just situations. We cannot categorize everything in one. And that has also the Buddha's approach. Silent, the noble silence is the best. Okay, certain situation. But certain situation, silence is not the solutions. You have to speak. You have to let know. So again, knowing the situations, the others, and basically, and then our own tools. Do I have the right tools? If I get involved there, and if anger arises, in that, do I have the tool to deal with that? If I don't have the tool to that, maybe sometimes backing up might be better instead of putting more fuel in the fire and doesn't know how to put doesn't know how to put it. So then it can become a big problems, create more suffering, more problem, bigger problem. And so if we don't have the fire extinguished, you know, better not to go. Yeah, yeah, better not to go too far, too close, and not to get involved. But if we have the fire extinguishing, then you should get and try to that, because so that wouldn't create more problem, because one can deal with that with a more calm, peaceful mind and without being out of control. And so I guess it depends on our own abilities, our own practice, our own state of minds. um and secondly, in long term, what might be most helpful, beneficial, more than the short term. So those are the something that we try to take in considerations, and before we kind of decide whether I should back off, whether I should kind of get more involved, and before we make those decisions. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, please. I don't have the trick. I have the treat. I have the treat, not the trick. I think one of the things, not only with the dependent arise and any practice, is sometimes if you want to focus on particular practice, whether we are trying to focus on dependent arisings, whether loving kindness, compassion, bodhicittas, or whether we are trying to focus on whatever different um, practice that we might want to focus at a certain time, or whole your life, whatever. Perhaps maybe write something and then put it in many places, throughout, small, in the bathroom, living room, bedrooms, dining rooms. And so when you see that, then it remind you, so it can be reminded, or we can use, phone, you can have a kind of reminder, I don't know, couple of times, 4 times a day, just to remind you of that. And so when that rings, and it is reminding of dependent arisings, and so again, maybe at the very beginning, you can have different sound. I don't know, like a bell, gong sound that remind you when that is there, then it is a reminder to be more mindful of the aware dependent arisings. And so, maybe 4 times, and then slowly 6, 7, 8 times, and then increasing it. That might be one tools that could be helpful. But yeah, I don't know other tricks. Any others? Then we can do that. Yes, please. Mm-hmm. Well, generally not knowing is ignorance, and but also within the different Buddhist school of thought, there are slightly different, um, you know, um, definition of ignorance. Um, but in Madhyamikas, in then is not is not just not knowing, but misperceiving the reality. So it's much more stronger than not knowing. Not knowing this is a cup is ignorance, but then perceiving this to be a clock is even much more worse and even much more ignorant. And the problem is not knowing is a problem, but then misperceiving uh, the reality is so much more stronger ignorance, and that the fundamental ignorance is misperceiving um, the reality. So, for example, even though phenomena do not exist independently, but even though all the phenomena are dependent arising and they do not exist independently, but misperceiving to them to exist independently. So that is the fundamental ignorance. And so that is the misperceiving to exist inherently when it do not exist inherently. So that is much more worse. And just to give more example, you know, another example could be not knowing the truth is one thing, but misperceiving truth is much more worse. If you don't know and if you are not misperceiving, your mind is a little bit more open. When someone, you know, say, hey, this is what it is, you can easily kind of get it. It's not so strong. But when you believe something else, and when you have strong belief, when you have strong misperception, even someone try to explain it, it's hard to go in your mind and to understand that. So in that way, again, that is much more stronger and much more worse. So yeah, that ignorance and misperceiving the reality. It's not only just not knowing. Um, yeah. Yes, please. Yes. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All these negative emotion are dependent arising. Everything that exists dependent arising. Yeah, as Nagarjuna says, there is in Lama Tsongkhapa, as well as is based in one of the sutras. There is no phenomena that is not dependent arisings, nor there is no any phenomenon that is not emptiness. So all phenomena are empty as well as dependent arising. And so empty and dependent arising do not contradict, but instead complement. Not only complement, instead the meaning of dependent arising is emptiness. The meaning of emptiness is dependent arisings. Emptiness means empty of inherent existence or independent existence. And dependent arising means non-independent existence, non-inherent existence. Okay, we do the dedications. Sanjo, Semjo, Rembo, Che, Mage, Bana, Gekyo, Che, Gewa, Nyamba, Meba, Yang, Kongle, Kondo, Pewa, Sho. Jigden, Kamde, Pende, Malu, Ba, Kanle, Chungwe, Sambe, Ishi, No, Garden, Tsungme, Tenjin, Gyatso, La, Soa, Depso, Shenden, Lendo, Sho. Okay. Savior, the land of snow, teachings and transmitter beings, who extensively clarify the path that unify emptiness and compassion. To the lotus holder, Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And we also dedicate for the swift return of the Lama, Geshe Lama Sabar Rinpoche, so that we can continue to receive the teachings, guidance, inspirations, life after life, until we achieve enlightenment and being under the care and guidance all the time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good night, thank you.
Thank you so much, Geshe-la.